Now, before we do questions, we have to redo the task.
Oh.
That would be great. Thanks, David. So just in recap, so running through the 5 things that I've told you, it's an opportunity to change your perspective. I gave you very few rules. You could have done pretty much anything to adapt. When you think about your purpose, hopefully you can learn something, pick your own purpose to apply to this one. Don't give up. Everyone in this room can do it. All you need is your voice. That's all you need to be able to achieve this task. So don't give up. The other thing is it's actually really quite easy. Very, very easy. Doesn't require any contortion. And remember the most important thing? Others. The people around you. It's interesting when we go, our automatic reaction when we're asked to adapt. So hopefully with that in mind, I'll give you 10 seconds to redo the task. Ready? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Thanks, David. Great. Okay. Now, number 1 and 3. Did anybody fail that task? Because we can have a remedial assessment later if you like. Okay. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. What an inspiring story. And, you know, I guess that's just the tip of the iceberg. And there's a lot more you could share with us. And I want to delve into all the people stuff. But I guess one of the things we're here to discuss today is around the technology as well.
Yes.
And, you know, you're privy to technological advancement and innovation that many of us would not have even known existed if it wasn't for your story. Tell us a little bit about the ecosystem of technology and, you know, is this happening in Australia? Are you travelling overseas?
Yeah, sure. So the ecosystem in Australia is, I would say, to be quite blunt, fairly niche. So there are some things that Australia does very well. There are other things.
Tom and Bill and
Sorry?
Brad, with Tom and
Yeah,
Bill.
yeah. But when you look at my car, you know, a lot of the client interface is done in Australia, but none of the tech pretty much came from Australia. You know, my arms, you might have seen the bionics that I'm trying to get up and running on the video. I'm still not quite there yet. But a lot of those, it's an international project. We've got Sweden, Vienna, Utah in the US, Chicago, I lose track, and a few others. UK, Leeds. A lot of my therapy's been done in the US with Chicago and surgery over there. And some of the mathematical design. So, you know, I think there's, you know, like QT's done a lot on robotics, but I think one of the real difficulties in my area is how we connect those things to humans, as is, I think, the research area that I've kind of been looking at. And I think, well, in the world we've got a long way to go, but I think in Australia, I think we have even further.
So prior to this, you were an executive with
Origin Energy,
wasn't it? Yep. Yeah. So you had carved out, you know, quite a serious career for yourself. What new opportunities have emerged through this disruption?
Yeah, it's been quite interesting. It took me quite a while to kind of get back to a new normal again. But as being an executive and doing the things that I do, I'm originally an engineer, but if I went back to being an engineer, I probably would fail terribly at it. It's just been so long since I didn't use my technical skills. So I was really looking at what skills did I have and how could I apply those in a potentially different way. So, you know, I'd done a lot of strategy and cultural change and governance type work. So I thought if I didn't have an organisation to do that in and I was more part-time, how could I do that? So I've really moved into the governance area and have a few boards and steering committees that I help out, which has been great.
And no doubt your strategy background's probably been quite useful for you navigating your way through.
Yeah, I always found the best use of the skills that I ever learnt at work were trying to manage kids. So
It's the ultimate leadership role, right?
yeah. Test it out, and if they don't work, So
you can't pay them. They're not.
No, exactly. Motivate them a different way. Yeah.
That's great. I'm sure our audience has some questions for you. Who would like to ask Matt a question? Yeah, table one.
Colin Jones from School of Management. I was just wondering, a sense of humour. I'm wondering how good was it before this happened? How much did you rely on it, and has it increased as you've been going forward?
My family and I have had a fairly long history with black humour, which has probably been fairly good through this. I can tell the jokes that most people can't about myself, so I think it's critically important to have a laugh. I quite often take things quite seriously, but I think it's important to mix that up with a bit of humour as well. So I don't think that's fundamentally changed. You can check with Diane here, but I think that's critically important.
Yes, down the back, thank you.
Hi, Russell Byrne. I work for Cross River Rail. We're lucky enough to be building a new railway line and new railway stations. What do you wish for in a mobility space? What do we need to do so much better?
It would be fantastic. I won't touch on the rail carriages themselves if you're not looking after that. That's a whole other space. I just wish exactly what everybody else wishes, to be able to easily get on stuff and off, to not have to sit there. Generally, quite often each day when I go to places, I have to sit there and basically think of the minute logistics everywhere that I go. It would be great to actually just be able to do something spontaneously and not have to get on Google Earth and try and fantastic technology is I can go and actually look to see, somebody asked me to a cafe, I've got to actually go and Google Earth can see whether or not there's a lip at the front. To actually just be able to do everything that everyone else can do without having to plan and, organise some special thing that somebody then has to ring ahead. I mean, even the trains, you've got to ring ahead to say that you're coming to this station, and then they've got to ring ahead to the next station. It's like, why can't we just get on and off easily? It can't be that hard, really, in this day and age. Ask yourself what you want. That's the answer to your question. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. Down the back.
Hello. My name's Andrew Best. I run an innovation hub for the engineering and construction sectors. And I suspect that, before you lost your limbs, you had a very adaptive capability already in making, I guess, the analogy to business.
Yes.
And the two previous speakers we had, I think those adaptive businesses already have a culture to change. I work with the construction industry, which is very conservative, and we talked about cultural changes. I just asked the question, is it got to be in the DNA of a company to change, or have you got to change the company significantly if you want to move a big organisation?
I don't believe so. I mean, I've worked in scenarios where I've had huge, resistance to change in some areas, but then, as I mentioned before, people are extraordinarily adaptive. Have you ever worked with oil and gas drillers? They're difficult to change. So what I've quite often in my career have had to get people to change when I haven't had direct control over them. And that's been a really good learning in my life, I believe, because it's then asking the question, well, okay, I might want them to change, but why do they want to change? We'll all adapt. How many of you actually went to the QUT seminar on how to use your iPhone before you bought it? We grab stuff and
I did leave it in the box for 3 months because it was hard to give up my BlackBerry.
Yeah, exactly.
I was very proficient.
But, I think, asking that question, I don't think it needs to be in the DNA, because I think in our DNA as humans, we are able to adapt to change. But I really don't like it when somebody tells me that the change is good when it's not. Everyone comes along, we've got a new IT system, well, that's fantastic. Like, it's fantastic for the people who need to collate the numbers. It's going to give me more work. I prefer them to say, it's going to give you more work. The change is not going to be necessarily good for you. But your motivator is, we pay you and we'll continue to pay you, but you have to do this. I'd be like, okay, I get it. If you're talking to my motivator, don't give me the rubbish kind of sales pitch that this is going to be good when it's not. Because not all change is good. It might be good for some and not others. Just acknowledge that and be okay with it, because people see through it, in my view. And I think that's the thing in those cultures where it is quite difficult to get the change. I feel that in the scenarios that I've faced in my working life, the organisation hasn't tapped into what's really important for that group. And I think when you actually do that, then I think that's the ability to do the adaptation and the change.
Some great advice. We've got time for one more question before lunch, but I do believe Matt and Diane are able to stay on for a few minutes if you do want to have a chat with them. So our final question before lunch, please.
Yes, Michael Boyle from QT. My first question relates to people in tech, and that's, does Fagan ever pay for coffee, or does he ever take advantage of the chip on your arm every time you go out? But the second part of that is, are there other simple adaptations like tech chips that you can just rub against that you actually find have been useful for you in terms of your life as it is now?
Yeah. Useful adaptation. I have a couple of different chips, so if you rip my arm off and run away, you can pay for things, but only up to $100, so I think I'm okay. And actually my bionic hand has a chip in it as well, and it actually does come off. So I have had a scenario where I couldn't get into a cafe. My kids rotated my hand, took my hand off, and paid at the cafe with my hand. So that was a great adaptation. But
Their show and tell must be really interesting.
Yeah, that's another story. So the other adaptations that I found particularly useful, and it's consumer electronics and the transition to the digital world has made a huge difference. So yeah, I can talk about all the individual kind of accessibility products. But voice dictation, it's fantastic for me. That's really helpful. Bluetooth, so basically this is my joystick, and I can control the computer with that. Obviously the car's been never-ending, and that's, as I mentioned, the self-driving technology has really helped that as well. Some of the other things, it's predominantly my ability to work. So, I can check my presentation on my phone. If I actually had a connection to here, I could change the slides. I run a paperless office because paper is not really very good for me. So I use all the paperless kind of technologies, the things that other people would use. But it's probably fair to say I'm a fairly early adopter, and I'm looking for some more. The thing that probably frustrates me the most is that everybody, or a lot of the organisations, are trying to corral their own ecosystem, and that makes it very difficult. Then when you're trying across multiple platforms and multiple technologies like I do, I think the big breakthrough that we'll get is when those barriers come down so that ecosystems can talk to each other. Apple versus Google versus Microsoft, they'll kind of work together, but then you end up with these little glitches that, so I can get one calendar by talking to Alexa. She'll give me one calendar, but she won't give me another because Amazon don't like talking to others, or the other way around. So, I think just the transformation to the digital community. Lucky we've got a veranda on our house because my online shopping prowess is pretty awesome. I got lots of different sources and find good products. So yeah, all that kind of stuff has been really helpful because, you think about it, and in people in my scenario, to go shopping would probably cost $50 to actually employ somebody else to take someone shopping, whereas I get free delivery because I have a credit card with them and they bring it into the kitchen. So, there's two edges to the digital transformation. So it can certainly help a lot of people, and it helps all the lazy humans in the world, and I think there's a fair few of those. But we also need to be careful not to isolate those people who aren't following us on those journey. So how do we actually do it from an inclusive perspective, I think is incredibly important. Sorry, I'm off topic.
No, it's fabulous. I think one of the first comments you made to us today, first little nugget of wisdom, was to change our perspective. And you've certainly helped us to do that today, Matthew. So thanks so much for sharing your time, your story, beautiful wife and family with us today. And we wish you all the best as you continue to adapt and lead the way for others as well.
Thanks, Danielle. Thanks, everyone.